Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the CyLab seminar series. This is a business risk forum event. I'm Richard Power, and occasionally I invite people in from the operational side in business and government to share their perspectives and to interact with us here. And it's my great privilege today to introduce my friend and colleague, Christoper Burgess. I'll read you, there's two bios here. This is the first one. CEO of Prevendra, Inc., intelligence and security company. Christoper writes professionally on a variety of topics to include security, education, social media and social networks, privacy, identity theft, espionage, spying, insider threat, data breach, healthcare compliance, online safety and security. He is the sole contributor to Senior Online Safety, where his writing focuses on both online and offline safety and security advice for seniors and the not-so-senior among us. Okay, that's a worthy enough biography as is, but I'll just add this. He's also a 30-plus year veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he received the Distinguished Career Intelligence Medal, which is the highest career recognition in the agency. And he's been a friend and colleague of mine for close to 2 decades now, and we co-authored Secrets Stolen, Fortunes Lost, Preventing Intellectual Property Theft and Economic Espionage in the 21st Century. So this is Christoper's third visit to CyLab, and we'd like to welcome him. Christoper.
Thank you very much, Richard, for that introduction, making sure that I also arrived to frigid weather. I come from Woodinville, Washington. We had our obligatory snow yesterday when I was taking off. We can go to spring now. We're all set. But my welcome here at Carnegie Mellon has always been warm, and I always look forward to coming back, and I do appreciate this kind invite. What I'd like to talk about today is senior online safety, the imperative. The topic is the most important to Prevendra, the company, and to me individually. Prevendra, our company name, oops, I must have joggled something. There we go. The company name comes from the Spanish root word prevenir, and that means to prevent, and Prevendra is the future tense. So I'm trying to suggest that we will get out ahead of the different threats that are out there, both for individuals, families, and companies. Our motto is stay safe and secure, and as you'll notice here, I've got our contact information. I also have my personal Twitter account, Burgess CT, as well as Senior Online Safety, Safety Seniors. When I talk out west, it's clacking the entire time. People are they're on the social networks and they're sharing. Feel free to do so. It is not disruptive to this speaker. And so let's get started here. This is what I'm going to be talking about today, seniors and those who aspire to be. So before I get started, how many of you have provided technical assistance to somebody over 50 in your family? 1 or 2 of you, perfect. So I'm sure some of you viewing online have also had this happen to you. So what I'm trying to do today is to make the case that we have an entire market out there that is waiting for all of us to be innovative and take the threat out of their hands and make the online experience safe. So at the end of the day, if I haven't gotten you thinking about how you can make a difference to the senior community, then I failed. I don't expect you to agree with everything I say. As a matter of fact, if you agree with nothing I've said, that's just okay too, because I don't have all the answers. That's why we're here at the Innovation Center today. So I'm going to define what a boomer and a senior is for those of you who haven't reached that mark. I'm going to talk about why we care, what are the threats, what's needed, what we can do about it, what our little company is doing about it, and Prevendra has been in business now. We launched back in April of 2013, and Senior Online Safety launched on September 8th of 2013. And that, if those of you who are watching the calendar, was Grandparents' Day. Thank you, Hallmark, very much. And we launched it with a blog post about online sharing of grandkids' photos and the risks that can be entailed in there, and location, et cetera. So the intent is to keep people online. And then what we're going to do is we're going to finish up with comments from you, ideas from you, questions from you, and perhaps a little bit of a dialogue. U.S. statistics, 245 million users online. The recent survey came out and said 222.5 million are actually spending money online. Latin America, those of you who had visited Senior Online Safety before you came here might have noticed that we're bilingual there. We also publish in Spanish. Why do we do that? Because there's another 245 million who have Spanish as their first language in this hemisphere. Are we going to go to other languages? Yes, but I only speak two. I'm going to need help to do the others. So I have English and I have Spanish. We'll go to Bulgarian, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Arabic. I've already identified an Arabic translator that's said they'd like to help. And then we have that whole left to right and right to left language deal to work with. Now, how many of you have one of these? Those in the back can't see it. All right. I'm a boomer. When I turned age 50, I got an invitation because I was now eligible to join the AARP. Did that make me a senior? No, but it made me part of the, quote, retired. Now, many will say I'll never retire, and that's probably true because I tend to always reinvent myself every couple of years. But part of the issue is that people born 1946 to 64, and those of you who are math challenged, that would be age, 49 to 67 in today's. That's your marketplace that I'm talking about today and above. So the boomers are all coming to the end of their days now as the boomer generation. They're going to be followed by Gen X, followed by Gen Y, the millennials. You're just going to keep naming them. But 25% of that generation are of online consumers today. 90% are on the internet. Now, if 90% of them are on the internet, and you're all on the internet, I know this to be true, how many of you have ever received an ad from a family member in an email indicative that their email had been hosed? 90% of this population is online. 34% use smartphones. I thought that number would be larger. But then I went and I looked at my own company logs, people who are reading what we put out, and I found that it's even less. I only have 10% of the people who read my product are using tablets and smartphones right now. Most of them continue to use laptops. And part of it is the print. If I'm using a laptop, I can get a bigger screen. We who live in technology sometimes forget about that accessibility factor. And then Facebook. Yes, it started off as being a college app created in Harvard by that guy Zuckerberg, and he took it forward, and then he let the rest of the people in. The largest growing demographic now are this group of 55 plus. And what's happening there? They're reuniting with people that they long lost. They're reuniting with people that they last saw in 6th grade. I can say that I graduated high school some 40 plus years ago. I am as old as I look. I got contacted last week by an individual who I went to 6th grade with. I also got contacted last week by an individual who said they were an individual I went to high school with, but they were a phony profile in Facebook. How was I able to tell the two? Well, it's hard. And then I get company every 50 seconds, or every 7 seconds, I'm sorry, somebody turns age 50. But what about the older group? What about these folks over the age of 65? Well, the stats say that 11% of them are online. I submit it's probably much higher than that. And of those, 50% of the 65 plus use the internet and 34% of the 75 plus use the internet. Let me tell you why I think more are online than the stats show. Because surveys can have that, that percentage of variance based on who they called and who they talked to. I think more are online, or they're online via surrogates, because all of the goods and services upon which they rely are online. And whether you like it or not, in the United States, for example, Social Security 2 years ago pushed all of us online. Everybody who has a Social Security number probably got a letter saying, please go online and claim your profile. Of these elderly, and I say that with a wink, 11% use the smartphones. But here's interesting. They're online 2 hours a day. Now, if I'm a malevolent person, that's a 2-hour window every day that I have somebody who arguably isn't in tune with technology because they're considered to be a technological immigrant. The flip side of that same coin is they were there at the start of the internet, and many of you in this room weren't. And I, for one, back in 1977, was looking at packet switching for the first time, and that thing called Internet Protocol, and everyone was going, can we do that? Can we really split up messages? We don't have to use that old ACP protocol where we string it all together over a radio teletype. We can split it up and put it back together again. And this is what I like. 89% of the 65 plus are on email every day. That might explain why the folks over at the Anti-Phishing Working Group have no problem bringing researchers into their cooperative and populating their annual confab, because phish is never going away. Malware is never going away. And let me make a change here real quick. There, I got a little clock here. So what do they do online? All of them. I told you about, oh, that's a bad color. 70% use the internet daily, 34% of the 75% of the 75 plus do. When you bring it all together, we communicate via electronic means, be it SMS, be it social networks, be it email, be it FaceTime, Skype, whatever. We're communicating electronically. Indeed, the argument is script, letters, the ink on the paper thank you note has gone away. It's now that one line, thanks very much for the Christmas gift, Grandma, that you sent me. 34% of these folks are reading the news online. So they are getting ads. They're expecting to get ads. The marketeers are on top of this. They're pushing ads out to the areas they read. Look at AARP online. They have a tremendous readership. Their membership is around between 40 to 53 million. That's a lot of eyes on copy. On January of this year, they started their equivalent of Match.com. In the first week, they had 7 million people sign up. Tell me they are not engaged. They're engaged. They're doing banking. 19% are doing banking online. Thank goodness they're protected in the United States by laws, but if you're a business and you're banking online and you get hosed, you're SOL. There's nothing you can do except pay the piper, because business banking has different laws than personal banking. So you want to keep that in mind if you're using electronic banking. Social networks, 18% of this population is online every day. That's a lot of folks and a lot of networks. But where are they predominantly? Well, I showed you 10% of Facebook is this demographic. But Facebook isn't the only thing. It just happens to be the one that's in English and in some other languages. You go to the Far East and you have QQNet. You have others out there. You go to India and you have other networks. So it's a global phenomena, and I do apologize that I'm speaking only from the US perspective, but that's where I'm investing my time at this moment. And they're on Twitter, but they're not sure how to use Twitter. But they're learning how to use Twitter, because I stand before you as evidence that old dogs can learn new tricks. And it's just a matter of time. And I see some smiles in the audience, so I have company in this regard. But what will they do online tomorrow? Everything. They don't have a choice. You see, Social Security Administration already shoved us online. And if any of you were watching that, it was a race between the seniors and the criminals to see who could register online for the Social Security online account first. There was no dual authentication. There was no safety checks at the beginning. And what happened was, if the criminal beat you to your Social Security number, they then changed the location where your deposit went. They then went and filed a 1040-Z on your behalf, and they claimed some amount, and the IRS was put in a position of pay and chase. Health. You all are at the vanguard of health. Some of you are out there creating methodologies to protect electronic medical records, to work on fraud in the environment. Again, telemedicine is going to be a huge part of today's seniors and tomorrow's. And with telemedicine, we're going to be calling doctors on the phone instead of going to emergency rooms. There are services out there now where we pick up the phone and we get an emergency room doctor, we tell them our malady, they give us some ideas. They might send us in to get somebody to look at, or they might just turn on your Skype and we'll take a look at that rash right now. Think about that. While it's great, it also has that other side of that sword that creates an opportunity for the criminal element. Taxes. I already told you about the identity theft and the race to tax. Tax identity theft is huge. It's huge. I wrote an article not too long ago that I put out on Senior Online Safety that talked about a group that was operating in Rhode Island, bless you, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and New York, and how they went about harvesting identities in Puerto Rico and then claiming them in New Jersey, Rhode Island, and New York, where they had their infrastructure. And they get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in this manner. And how do they get the identities? They harvest them from research groups. They harvest them from social networks. They harvest that knowledge-based questions that we all use. How many of you have ever been asked, what city were you born in? What is the knowledge-based question most often used? What city were you born in? What city did you get married in? What was your first car? It's all the stuff that normal people would have in their, quote, Facebook profile that they forget to make private, not public. So it's harvestable. And all of you are technologists or are being exposed to technologists in this audience, but there are a great many people not in this audience that aren't. And so we have to remember, even though we might consume security every day and we might consume cautions every day, some people are just worried about, what am I going to do today that'll put food on my table? And what can I do today to protect myself from laws? So I talk about banking, online banking. I already mentioned that you're protected if you're an individual. I endorse online banking. It allows that shut-in access to their accounts. Insurance, same sort of thing. In the medical arena, medical identity theft is a growing phenomenon. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a future slide here. And then email. We all have our spam filters. They're great. You know, I get pill ads. I get body part enlargement ads. I get everything that you all get as well. I even get invitations to have a new wife, though my current wife's doing just fine. They're there. Email come-ons are always going in, and then the social engagements. And so all of this is where our seniors are today and where they will be in spades tomorrow. Oops, I want to make sure. Yeah, there we go. So what are the threats? Crime and carelessness. Maybe not in that order. Maybe carelessness and crime. into healthcare. There was an article in the Washington Post just yesterday about medical identity theft, and it was relying on what came out of the Pew Research. And they talked about how if individuals are posting about their diabetes online and somebody has your medical insurance information, they can then use that they've harvested, they then use that to make a purchase for diabetes products, testing kits, strips, etc. Using your insurance information, it shows up in the carrier's information. It looks normal because diabetes. The only difference might be it's being shipped to a new address. It's showing up in your EOB, explanation of benefits, excuse me. I know, don't use acronyms. Shows up in your explanation of benefits, and unless you're paying attention, because as you get older, I'm going to tell you right now, your EOBs get longer. And so these explanation of benefits, it slides in there. And a penny a day adds up over time. So if it's just little things like a test kit that gets purchased, it shows up on Craigslist the next week, they turn it around, they get something that costs $50, they shove it off on Craigslist for $25, it's a net plus of $25 for an identity that they paid $11 off the wholesale market. And then medical identity theft and fraud, two different things. I put medical fraud in the world of I'm a caregiver and I'm just making stuff up. I'm billing 14 hours a day and I'm working 8. I'm billing to 6 different carriers, the equivalent of 12 hours a day, and I'm just raking in the money. I'm just perpetrating fraud, and it happens with such regularity in the millions of dollars. The Health and Human Services came out on Medicare and said DOJ did a great job. They recovered over $1 billion worth of fraud last year. I asked the question, when are you going to recover the next $3 billion? Because that's just 1/4 of it. There's so much out there, and the loopholes that they work within are so easy because the carriers are not interconnected in a network. There's no way to check one against the other. It's these little networks of individual entities that said, okay, we're going to share information to prevent fraud. We're going to share information to prevent fraud. This is why, in my humble opinion, a clearinghouse of insured, if you have a one-carrier system, fraud goes away because you can see it all. But when you can't see it all, that's when you have opportunity. And then the medical identity theft comes in a couple different varieties. One is, they call it the Robin Hood syndrome. I have insurance, you don't. I give you my card, you go in and get services. You say you're me. We look alike. It would work. But it comes down on the downside. Because what if they go into the same hospital where you're going in, you're AB positive, they're B negative, they update your medical records because it's a glitch. You get hit by a car, they've got the EMT out there, they're ready to give you blood on the scene, and they call in and say, okay, what type of blood does he have? And they pull up your record and they give you the wrong blood and they kill you. Medical identity theft can be very dangerous, but it can also be very preventable. And it can be preventable by going in at the right after the care and services to make sure that you're not doing pregnancy tests on a 70-year-old male, that you're not giving services in San Diego at the same time the day before that you were giving services in New York. The low-hanging fruit exists. We clear out the low-hanging fruit. That allows us the opportunity for researchers such as yourself to stand up and attack the really hard problems, to attack the problems where that data analytics really comes into play. Then we have the consumer interaction, that caregiver trust and financial abuse. Look at that number. $2.9 billion per annum comes out of caregiver abuse. This is family members. This is hired individuals, because what happens often, and not always, is somebody is hired to come in and help Aunt Gertrude. Aunt Gertrude is being assisted, and they're helping them, it might just be cleaning windows. But then they say, I can't find my readers. Would you write this check for me? I wanted to write it to, Adam's grocery store because they're going to be delivering me my goods and services, and I've got a $98 bill here. Would you write it out for me and drop it off on the way down when you leave? Sure. And most people would be honest. But there are those who are unscrupulous and who would write that check out for $98, would put in the check register that it went to Adam's Grocery, and then write it to themselves. It happens, and it's sad. But that's a lot of money. And then we have regular identity theft. I talked about tax identity theft. I talked about Social Security fraud. But here's the reality. When I talk to senior groups, I get many of them saying, I'm not online, I don't have to worry. And then I ask them, have you heard of a little company called Target? Have any of you ever shopped at Neiman Marcus? Have any of you ever had a credit report that was handled by one of the big three? They go, yes to all of the above. And I said, well, some of the PCI data went missing with the Target breach. They then went on to say that some personal identifying information may have gone missing too, because that was one of the stores that had you swipe your driver's license. So you're willingly providing PII, personal identifying information, with your PCI, protected consumer information, at a retailer, and you're hoping their security isn't the weakest link because you're not online. You're protecting yourself, but they're with your identity. Or in the medical arena, I challenge you to go out there and just choose the search browser of your choice and look up data breach, medical. There was a group out of New Jersey last year. 839,000 individuals lost their protected health information or their PII or both. How did that occur? Somebody broke into their offices and lifted a laptop. The laptop was not encrypted. They thought they were HIPAA compliant, but apparently they weren't because the laptop wasn't encrypted and it contained information. Again, the individuals on board that laptop had their identities compromised. So the question I'm going to ask, how long will that identity be compromised for? Anyone? 6 months? 90 days? They give you 90 days of credit monitoring coverage. They give you a year of identity monitoring coverage. But what's the window of risk once you've been compromised? I say it's forever and beyond, because there's a lot of people voting in Chicago that died a long time ago. But you see what happens is that once your identity is compromised, that's you. You're the variable in this. You now are stuck in the position of having to monitor your transactions, your identity for fraud forevermore. And so it doesn't matter if you're online or offline, you could be at risk. So what's needed? I'm going to talk about 4 items that are important I'm investing my time in. A senior ecosystem, a conveyor belt of knowledge share, PII, personal identifying information, PHI, protected health information monitoring, and identity theft restoration. And then long-term healthcare facilities. It's a niche that I see has great opportunity for those who have the entrepreneurial spirit. So let's talk about the senior ecosystem. What do I think needs to be there? I think we need tablets, and I'll tell you why I think we need tablets. We need tablets that are configured for the senior. My mother-in-law was 94 years old. She lost her hearing, and when she lost her hearing at her assisted living, and then after that at her nursing home, what happened is she became more and more isolated. So we went and visited her, and she had a little bit of dementia going on. So we loaded up about 1,000 photographs spanning about 5 or 6 decades. We then put in there a notebook so that people could type on there and she could read it, or it would read her, she could read it and then she would respond. We were using that to communicate with her. And what we found was when she read, her eyes were fine, she just couldn't hear. When she read, she was having conversations with us. She was alive. But when somebody went in the room and they'd shout, it wasn't doing any good. But what really set it in my mind was when she started looking at those pictures. This lady had never touched an electronic information device in her life. The very first one was this tablet. We gave her a Generation 1 iPad. We put the pictures up there. We showed her. You take your finger. You look at them like this. Where you're starting is last month. It goes all the way back to the 40s. She said, okay, let me see. And she just started. And then it picked up. And it was like lightning fast. She was zipping through pictures. And she wasn't commenting on anything in the 90s, in the 80s. And then around the 70s, she started commenting. Why? Because her long-term memory was kicking in. We were hitting her neurons up there. And then when she got to the 60s, she was telling stories about these pictures. When she hit the 50s, she was energized. A little light went on in her head, and we said, what really happened that day when she had to go to assisted living? That was the day she lost her anchors. That house she was in, where she was living under self-care. That house that had all the scrapbooks and memories. Bing. What if we could bring all of those memories with her? What if we could create that ecosystem to support the senior, no matter where they are in their stage of life? And we could do it in a manner that's secure. So memorabilia. Any of you gone in and pre-planned your funeral lately? Not something we talk about a lot. But I'm going to tell you, when you do, they'll offer to put together a 25-slide show of you. And they'll charge you a nickel or a picture or whatever it is. Why can't we do this for our seniors? Memorabilia. Communications. They want to communicate with one another. But if they lose their hearing or they lose their sight, we need accessible technology to them. We also need it to be free of malware. We need it to be free of malware, and we also need it to be in a moderated arena. So why can't we create moderated communities of families? An ecosystem where a family just fires it up, and now grandma's in assisted living, being assisted online, being able to communicate via email, but somebody in the family is filtering it for spam, for inappropriate messages, like, why didn't you put me in my will? That sort of thing. Or the malware. That fish that's out there. Social interaction. That controlled community. They have them for children. Disney has a network for kids. It's moderated. Your Sphere, run by a friend of mine, is set up for age 10 to 18. Or, I'm sorry, 17. It's moderated. Why can't we set up senior networks that are moderated and whose individuals, when they join, have their identity validated? And not just fill out this form and say you're over 13 years old, but an actual validation of identity, which will cut down, won't eliminate, but will cut down on the fraudulent personas that are online. And I talked about family engagement. Extended care support. Telemedicine again. If we have this ecosystem, then whoever your medical provider is can plug in. They can have access to medical research. They can have access to their medical records. One of the coolest things I did recently was look at my heart online via the sonogram they did. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, watching those valves go. But if you have access to your medical records, you are knowledgeable. And education. And it's that education is that ongoing area where it's a nonstop opportunity. Healthcare facilities. How many of you have ever set foot in some long-term healthcare facilities? The bigger ones have IT departments. The smaller ones have whoever's on the night duty maintains the computer. Think about that. I'm in a facility, you're giving me my meds, I have to give you all of my prescription information, you put it on a box, the box happens to be running XP, now I'm at risk of losing all of my prescription information and at risk for medical identity theft. So what I'm purporting to do is, because so many in this arena view security as a cost center, is to turn it around and make it a profit center for them. Because if it can pay its own way, then people will adopt security practices. And the way I want to do that is, the next generation coming into assisted living expects broadband. We'll charge them for it. They'll want identity monitoring and restoration services. Why? Because the senior is the number one target. They're assumed to be the least knowledgeable and to have the most money. So if I put in place identity monitoring systems, think about that. If I'm looking at my credit report, I'm 60 to 120 days behind the event. I am chasing the criminal. If I'm monitoring my identity out there, or somebody is on my behalf, and I see it up for sale, then I'm ahead of it. But even if you do everything right, you can be wrong. We don't live in a Pollyanna world anymore. That's why you need restorative services. You need somebody to be able to help you, because it takes about 300 hours to get your identity back to normal after it's been compromised. Who's got 300 hours? But if you have restoration services, they flick the button, the pros take over and they do it. Then telemedicine I talked about, and then the senior cloud I already described. Knowledge share. That's what Prevendra exists for, sharing knowledge. It was my goal when we started the company that I would degauss my brain in a bit-by-bit fashion. Everything in it would come out and it'd be useful. Why? Because when I was with that government agency that Richard mentioned before, I found the most egregious thing was the secret that sat in the safe. And it didn't do anybody any good. So if I have something that can help somebody else, I'm sharing it. That's why I'm here today. So we have threat and safety. We can keep the seniors up to speed on that. Every day there's a new scam. One that's hitting Western Washington right now is the phone call saying, I've got a grand jury subpoena, I've got an arrest warrant for you for failure to show up at jury duty. Oh, really? Caller ID says it's coming from the King County Sheriff. So they've spoofed the caller ID. They scared the bejesus out of you by saying there's an arrest warrant, but we can mitigate it with a fine if you pay it right now. Just give me your credit card number. They charge the credit card number. That's the winner. Then they steal your identity and create more credit cards, because in the course of filling out the form, they have to validate all of the information on the form. So, can I have your correct date of birth? Can I have your social security number, please? And do we have the correct mailing address? And how many people live at that residence? They then go out and harvest additional information so they have the knowledge base information necessary to go out and use your persona. Senior cloud, identity monitoring, medical and financial, digital preparedness. I haven't talked about that. How many of you have more than one online account? All of you. Good. Wills, advanced medical directives, safety deposit boxes, secret notebook, grandma's jewels that you want to make sure goes to the right person. All of these require direction of some sort. But we live in a society now that is highly mobile. No longer are we just moving down the street from our family. We're moving everywhere. So what we've come up with is what we call digital preparedness for when you're unavailable, I get hit by a truck. My family needs to be able to get into accounts. Have an ecosystem where they can access as my designee and take my place. How did this come about? It came about when I was with the agency. I would travel a lot. And my wife was always saying, all right, heaven forbid you get hit by a truck. What am I going to do? And where is everything? And we created what we called the red folder. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's something that seniors need. We need to also have proactive monitoring for all of these. And we need restorative services for these. We can't afford to have our seniors losing their nest egg, because a senior can't recover. I venture to say that 20% of the audience, if they lost some money today, they say, I can earn it tomorrow. Because who among us hasn't had somebody hoodwink us? But as I get older, I do find that my cognitive skills are not as sharp as they once were. That's why they call it retirement. And I also know that I need help sometimes. And that's why I'm thinking that we need this sort of opportunities out there to provide help and assistance from trusted entities so that our seniors can stay safe online. So what is Prevendra doing? We're doing the knowledge share at Senior Online Safety. We've created an application to push out information. Right now it's only on the Android, but push out information both in text and in video. That's our goal. Why? Because we just want information to flow. We want somebody to have information at their beck and call. One of the major issues that I found when I was in the corporate world, I still am, but I'm in my own company now, was that when people were training security, it was once and done. Your first day of business, you showed up, you got the health briefing, you got the security briefing, everybody's good to go. Here's your password, here's your laptop. It's a continuum. This is why I call it the conveyor belt of knowledge share. The red folder is our digital preparedness guide. Basically what it is. Give me your instructions, your map for all your online stuff. Give me your instructions for where's the will? What do you want done with this, this life insurance policy? Where are they? Just a map so that if you're incapacitated, you get deployed if you're in the military, right then and there, your family's got it. They don't have to be next to you. It's a digital archive. We're building that now. I've teamed up with an entity. They've created ID Warriors. I'm putting my name behind it. Identity monitor and restoration. Emphasis on restoration. The monitoring part's pretty cool too. But like I said, you can do everything right and somebody else can do something wrong and your identity's still hosed. Long-term health care, I'm doing knowledge shares right now. But I'm hoping that somebody will take these knowledge shares that I'm giving and they're going to build an ecosystem designed specifically for long-term health care. One man can only do so much. The senior tablet ecosystem. I think this is a great opportunity for researchers such as yourself to build ecosystems, to build community opportunities out there so that seniors have a safe environment. Families can plug and play their seniors into it so that they stay connected. Why? Because the worst thing that can possibly happen to me as a senior is to be unconnected. And if I go into assisted living and I don't have an ecosystem, then just buy me a sailboat and send me out to sea, because I'll be happier watching the sun go up and down. We must care, all of us. The threats will remain. We all know what's needed. And you don't have to go far. Just go back into your own family and ask. And what do we need to do to get it done? We need to collaborate. We need to put our heads together. We need to be generous with our ideas, and that all opportunity we don't have to own. We can share opportunities. Why? Because every 7 seconds somebody turns 50. And 50 is my magic number in my demographic that I'm trying to go after, age 50 and above. And pretty soon we'll outnumber all of you 50 and below. And with that, I thank you. Let's open it up to discussion and questions. Yes, sir.
Well, I found it to be an interesting talk and a kind of a challenging proposal, but I think you're falling into a paradox of the threat out there fallacy, in the sense that you're considering, okay, if I can validate the participants to be 50 years and older, I don't have to worry about the threat because they're out there and the good guys will be in here.
Then I apologize, because I believe that we are responsible for ourselves, but there's at a point where I need help. And that help is what I'm trying to create. Because I myself, maybe I can operate without this, but I don't know that the seniors I've encountered have this. I do know that from our own research, when I talk to individuals who are helping their grandparents or helping their own parents, they're saying, is there something I can? And I don't believe that tools are going to be the solution. I believe that knowledge share is the ultimate solution. It's the gray matter. But as we get older, we got to keep it exercised. And that's what I'm trying to do here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how do you address the insider threat?
The insider threat is a different talk that I gave once before. But it is. In the healthcare arena, they have to have checks and balances. They have to have the ability to monitor who's accessing the information. In these small long-term healthcare facilities, do they have that? Do they operate under the principle of least privileged access? I don't know, but I'd like it to be. I view that as the basic blocking and tackling, and that if you have the ability to know who's accessed information, yeah, you can walk the dog back when the crime commits, but you can also prevent it. But the reality is the margins these facilities run on are so thin as it exists that they can strive for the best security they can afford, as opposed to the best security that's available. And perhaps we can build the equivalent of the best available technology at an affordable price if we think about this paradigm a little bit differently. That's my hope. Anyone else? Well, I thank you very much for your time, and I thank you for this kind invitation to be here.